Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. Here I am in the Vatican City. Behind me you see two of the Swiss Guard wearing those uniforms designed by Michelangelo, the blue, red and yellow vertical stripes, and sometimes they carry halberds, these very long pikes. I think they're not kelp sharp, they're just sort of ceremonial, sometimes metal helmets, these guys wearing black berets. But sometimes they just wear ordinary suits and then they have guns under their suits, just as close protection officers. So the Swiss Guard really are Swiss, and they have to be aged 18 to 26, commit to I think at least 5 years service. Now Switzerland bans the recruitment of foreign mercenaries, but there is an exception for them, and the Swiss Guard has been there for many centuries. And then when Switzerland had its Reformation, some of the cantons had converted to Protestantism, so some of them came from Protestant cantons and therefore were Protestants but in service of the Catholic Church, despite the Catholic Church doing its best to crush the Reformation. Some of them nevertheless laid down their lives for their oath to try and defend the papacy, because you know, Italian states, Catholic states, sometimes fought against the papacy. France, being a Catholic country, sometimes fought against the papacy, so it was just hugely hypocritical. It was Julius II in the early 16th century. He was the warrior pope because he was so bellicose. Anyway, this is Paul VI's place. You can see a bit of St. Peter's Basilica behind me. That's the largest church in the world, and some visitors to the Vatican going in there, VIPs, not lowlifes like me. And around the corner is Via della Stazione Vaticano, because the Vatican used to have its own railway station. The Pope has got his own helicopter, and there's a windsock at the back of the Vatican Gardens, giving some idea about when they need to take off or not. I'm not sure what this huge building is here with the bars and the lower windows, but look at that fine-looking balcony up there with some papal symbol down there on it, and a Latin motto. I can't quite remember what it was. Miserando atque Eugenio or something like that. So like loving kindness. Oh, is that because that's misericordia? I'm not quite sure what it is. So yeah, Paul VI's place. He was Pope 1963 to 78, August 78, and then he died. And he's the one who abolished the Noble Guard, as in the Papal Cavalry Regiment, and the Metropolitan Guard, which was for ordinary men in Rome to be part-time soldiers of the Vatican. That cavalry regiment, they had about 2 horses at that stage, and they just accompanied people from the edge of the Vatican to the main building, and that was it. Go back to the early 19th century, it's found that they had plenty of cavalry. So he was going to abolish the Swiss Guard, but at the last minute he was persuaded not to. There's this sort of Society of the Broken Lance for former members of the Noble Guard. There's still a few of them knocking around. Anyway, he also abolished the death penalty in the Vatican City, though it hadn't actually been imposed for a very long time before that. His real name is Giovanni Battista Montini. That was Paul VI's real name, because of course when they become the Pope, they take a new name. Some priests, if they join an order of priests, as opposed to being diocesan clergy, they too take a new name if they say join the Benedictine order. But of course the Benedictine order are monks, but a monk can then become a priest. So the difference is a priest officiates at certain ceremonies. The certain ceremonies only count if a priest celebrates them. So that's a difference. So you could be a monk and a priest at the same time, a bit like being a doctor and a dentist at the same time. Anyway, so here we are in St. Peter's Square, and this colonnade here is supposed to be like arms embracing the world. And then you can see all these images up high. I'm not sure who the statues are. They mostly look like popes, mostly wearing papal tiaras, and I do see a big papal symbol here. So the Pope comes to the loggia in the center of St. Peter's Basilica and addresses people. Now, what I'm hoping will happen in a few years' time is I can't remember who it is, the Cardinal Secretary of State, I think he's the one, as more or less the Prime Minister of the Vatican, will appear on the loggia there and say, Annuncio vobis gaudium mainem, habemus papem, eminentissimum ac reverendissimum, dominum cardinalum Georgium sancta Romani ecclesia Callahanum, qui sibi nomen imposuit pium tredecimum. Now, in case your Latin's even worse than mine, that means I announce to you great joy, we have a Pope, the most reverend and most eminent Lord Cardinal George Cardinal Callahan, who takes to himself the name Pius XIII. Anyway, there's the loggia, and they put a big what would I call it? Not carpet, something like that. Piece of cloth hanging down there to say the announcement's coming. So, in honor of the main apostle Paul V, the citizens of Rome to the Pontifex Maximus, as in the Pope, in the year 1612, the 7th year of his pontificate, as in reigning as Pope. So you see above there Jesus holding the cross, various saints way up the top. So that is St. Peter's Basilica, as in royal in Greek. That's what basilica is. So it's an enormous church, the largest place of worship on earth. And then there's this huge obelisk here, but rather plain. It's got nothing carved in it. Some inscription down near the bottom, and then it's got inscriptions on the various halves of the walls here. And it's wonderful to see it so empty. This time of year, you normally see it jam-packed. Now, there's a Vatican post office where you can send letters, pay over the odds for your stamps there, because if you're a stamp collector, you want those. In the old days, you get your passport stamped if you paid, but I asked and they said, no, we don't do that now. Well, maybe I was in the wrong place. So all these wooden barriers to hold back the crowds if it's so huge. The Pope Mobile would go around here. That was invented for John Paul II. Now, John Paul I was only in office for about a month. He was elected in August 1978 and he died in September 78. He was just looking into the Vatican Bank and Bank Ambrosiana. There was this sort of clandestine Masonic lodge in the Vatican called P2, Propaganda Due, and of course Catholics were not allowed to join the Freemasons by the church. We are allowed to join it by the Freemasons. Of course, they say you're welcome, any person of any religion, will never ask you what it is. But there's a lot of hypocrisy, obviously, and was involved with the mafia and indeed Christian democracy, as to say the dominant political party. So in Italy, so was he murdered as he's looking into it? He was a healthy man in his late 50s, hardly drank just enough red wine to be good for his heart, didn't smoke, exercised, didn't eat too much. I would suspect he didn't have too many STDs and probably wasn't a drug addict. But he went to bed healthy, and as we say in Ireland, then he woke up dead. And he'd had a few medical checkups in his 1 month as Pope, and there was nothing wrong with his health. So was he discreetly murdered? We don't know. Anyway, look at this ship here. Represent, is it meant to be, it's meant to be all the ethnicities. There's this Orthodox Jewish man at the shop, at the front, and we're all on a boat. Is it like Noah's Ark or whatever? So humanity, we're all together, okay? This is the message I'm taking from it. What do you think of my exegesis? We should all look out for each other. And there's an angel wings in the background. People of all races. It doesn't actually show the colour. They're all the same colour, but maybe there's an important message in that, actually. Anyway, so I remember one of my Romanian students, adult students, said he was here years ago, and he was chatting to his wife in Romanian, and they got a tap on the shoulder, and someone said to him, excuse me, we're about to steal from you, but we're Romanians too. We heard you speaking our language, and we don't steal from our own nationality, but your zip is open. Wasn't that nice of them? Honour amongst thieves. Not that my student Marianne was a thief, and I'm not suggesting most Romanians are like that, no. So Vatican Post Office, looking a bit empty to me. So anyway, the street leading down from St. Peter's Basilica is Via Conciliazione. I hope I accentuated that correctly, as in conciliation, in honour of the Lateran Pact of 1929, when the Kingdom of Italy signed a treaty with the Vatican City, recognising the sovereignty of the Vatican City. And somewhere down here is the border. You wouldn't realise you're crossing an international border. It's not stringently enforced, there's no border control. And paying the church lots of money for the loss of property, and saying yes, Catholicism is the state religion, shall be taught in all schools and all the rest of it, and the Catholic Church accepting that the Kingdom of Italy was a legitimate state, accepting its loss of territory, and agreeing not to interfere in politics. So that was the conciliation, the Lateran Pact, which stands to this day. Now I know it was signed by the fascist government of Benito Mussolini, but it's still honoured by the successor state, the Republic of Italy, not just the Kingdom of Italy. So Il Mondo Cattolico is over there, a shop, and L'Osservatore Romano, as in the Roman Observer, which is an Italian language newspaper about the Vatican. It's published very close to here. So I walked most of around that hill, which is at the rear of the Vatican, and these huge and lovely gardens there. You might want to watch Pastor Angelicus, as in angelic shepherd, which is about Pius XII. I think the first film about a pope. There are earlier popes who were filmed, but this was, I think, during the Second World War it was filmed, and you can see in colour this magnificent ceremony where he's carried in on the sedia gestatoria, as in the seat of acts, borne aloft by 8 of the gentlemen of the Vatican in their tail suits. So it might seem incredibly conceited, but it was a way he could see and be seen before the Pope Mobile was invented, so he could move through the crowds, be high up, you know, that high. Anyway, and there are also these big ostrich feather fans like they use for the pharaohs. Okay, this is the Via Conciliazione I was talking about, and it leads down to the river Tiber which bisects Rome. So we are on the west bank of the Tiber. Remember, the papacy was based actually on the east bank of the Tiber for over a millennium. And that's the end of St. Peter's Square. Then there's Pius XII Square. So Pius XII, his pontificate was, oh my goodness, I hope I get this right, 1922 to 1939. He died that March. No, what am I talking about? He's 1939 to 1958. I was thinking about Pius XI before that. There's been no Pius the baker's dozens, not yet. So a lot of the buildings behind that will be the papacy, as in, well, the Pope where he actually lives. And the Pope has got several palaces around Rome. Okay, so now the papacy has got diplomatic relations with the Republic of China, which is Taiwan to you and me. So there's this one China policy. You've either got to recognize the People's Republic of China with its capital as Beijing of the rightful government of the whole of China, i.e. including Taiwan, or you can recognize Taiwan. That's the one China policy. Now, almost every country in the world recognizes the People's Republic of China, but the Vatican is one of the very few which recognizes Taiwan. Look at that papal tiara and the flag of the Vatican City. Unfortunately, there's not much more than a breath of wind, and I wish it would flutter outwards. You could see it half yellow, half white, with the crossed keys, one silver, one gold, and the papal tiara. And down here there is a Taiwanese embassy, a brackets Republic of China. Most people would know what Republic of China is. So the Chinese government is therefore not keen on the Catholic Church. It has a patriotic church which is quasi-Catholic, but the Pope doesn't actually recognize. Real Catholicism has to exist underground in China. So the Chinese government is distinctly lukewarm on Christianity because of the Taiping Rebellion. When was it? Sort of 1850 to 1864 abouts, possibly the bloodiest war of all time until the First World War came around. At least 10 million people killed, possibly up to 30 million people killed, and that's because of a Christian cult led by a Chinese man who said he was the brother of Jesus Christ. And ironically, Chinese Gordon, this British General Charles Gordon, he led his troops, he led some Chinese government troops against the Taiping Rebellion. And the Chinese soldiers who were leading were almost all non-Christians, and he was fighting against fellow Christians, despite himself being a zealous Christian. But I think he regarded the Taiping rebels as heretics, and thought that Confucianists or Buddhists or whatever were more acceptable than people who preached counterfeit Christianity. So here it is, so quiet, so empty. I've seen it jam-packed. So it's very pleasing. That bloke is a bit of a loony. So here, Via della Conciliazione. I'm on it right now. I wonder what it was called prior to that. Oh yeah, I'm seeing the Croatian embassy to the Holy See. Now, C is here, it's S-E-E, as in seat. So they're like the seat of